So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Lovejuice.
The other day I produced a Louis, had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithm really aren't that happy. If a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we could text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the track Xtra. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of On the Track Xtra. My name's John Dans. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and this little lady is Lilith Tinkerbell, the most important, or she tells me, of the CFZ cats. For those of you who don't know, every Wednesday evening at 6:30 for about a quarter of an hour, and every Saturday afternoon at 3 for about twice that, we bring you a miscellany of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality, I hear you ask? What would you do if the chickens start to sing? What would you do if they flap their tiny wings? What would you do if the chickens began to sing and shout? Would you join in with the fun and wave your arms about? Thank you very much there to the Chicken Chorus for having explained so succinctly what surreality is and what it's all about. You will, I suspect, be seeing more of the Chicken Chorus here on CFZ TV over what is euphemistically known as the festive season. Now, to carry on from last week, as I told you, let's see if I can just show you, because I've actually, with dear Judith, moved it into somewhere a little bit more manageable on the stool in front of me, which is actually a stool which my darling stepdaughter painted the Mothman or the Owlman logo on, which was very kind of her. There's a whole pile of things which I've been keeping to go through in this little show of ours, but because things never work out the way they seem to, the pile's been getting higher and higher and higher as we deal with stuff that comes in each week. However, we have finally got to carry on from last week, because last week we looked at the annual report from Butterfly Conservation. This week we are going to look at the most recent issue of Butterfly Conservation, which is as new to me as it is to you, because I haven't read it at all. I'm just opening it for the first time here, and I'm putting some rubbish into the bin, because I do have a bin by me to pick up rubbish in. And here is Butterfly Conservation, the latest issue now. An attractive cover with a young lady carrying a bucket. Can you see that? I'm never very good at being able to position these things on the screen. But there's a young lady carrying a bucket. Now let's have a look at what there is in this particular issue. Now, this is quite interesting. I'm not sure if this is an advert or an article. I think it's what my late boss, the late and reasonably lamented Simon Wollstonecraft, used to call an infomercial. And it is showing how you can book a holiday cottage or a holiday mansion or a holiday anywhere you want, right in the middle of butterfly-friendly areas, and it shows you a picture of a marbled white. Very interesting. I'm sure it would be lovely to do if I could afford it, which I can't. So, but just because I can't afford it doesn't mean that none of you can. So check it out. That looks really rather a nice thing to do. It's an advert for something called the Holiday Property Bond. Now let's look at the news pages. Oh dear. It's found the latest State of Nature partnership with butterfly conservation has helped to produce a landmark report that shows the extent of UK wildlife's devastating decline. Apparently 1 in 6 of British animal species are in danger of extinction. And here it shows a lot about. It starts off with a picture of a large blue, which is a butterfly. I keep on promising I'm going to do a story about it. I will somewhere along the line, but it won't be today. But if you want to get hold of this State of Nature 2023 report, you can get it for free at stateofnature.org.uk. It then goes on to highlight the butterfly conservation programme, Creating Space for Nature for Everybody. We talked about this a little bit last week, and this goes into more detail and shows a lovely picture of what I think are green-veined whites, just about to show what happens when a mummy white and a daddy white love each other very much. Please forgive my horrible cough. Now what's quite nice, this has got all sorts of things from butterfly conservation which can raise money this Christmas time for their various projects, which are very, very good things to do and very, very, very important. And again, here we have, and then we have a story here about the mysterious appearance of black-veined whites in the UK for the first time in over a century. This butterfly was reasonably well known in Britain, but because of climate change it became extinct, or rather it became extirpated in this country round about the time of the First World War. And despite the fact that none other than Sir Winston Churchill worked together in the years between the wars with L.Hugh Newman, who is, as I'm sure everybody, whoever watches any of our butterfly episodes will know, is somebody I hold in great regard. They worked together to try and reintroduce them. For various reasons it didn't work, but they've turned up in Britain, in the London area, in several places this summer. It is unlikely that they are natural immigrants, and it's almost certain that they have been introduced by well-meaning, or not so well-meaning, butterfly enthusiasts. But I think it's brilliant that they're here, and I really, really hope that they've managed to breed, that they will be here again next year. People have been talking about how important this is, and people from butterfly conservation and other officially sanctioned organisations have been talking about the possibility of being able to reintroduce them properly. And I, for one, think that would be a bloody good idea. Now we have got stuff here about how to benefit rare species such as butterflies in your will. I have put a bequest in my will for these beautiful living jewels of creatures, and I would suggest that you all do as well. We also say goodbye to Karen Goldie Morrison, who was the chairperson, the outgoing chairperson, and we have a report of this year's Big Butterfly Count, which is a thing that I usually become involved in. I was actually not well enough this year, but it's something I would recommend you all do, because it does give an up-to-the-minute picture of what the conditions are of the British butterfly species at a snapshot of each year. And now we have an interview with the new chair of trustees, a guy called Martin Spray, who says that his ambition is that every child can see butterflies. And then that admirable comment is put aside a picture of a hummingbird hawk moth, which ever since I first saw one when I was a little boy, have always been one of my favourite creatures. When I was, I think, 7, my Uncle Tim bought me a copy of the Observer's Guide to Larger British Moths. And although I was living in Hong Kong at the time, quite a lot of the migratory hawk moths are the same species. And I was looking through this book, and the same afternoon I saw a hummingbird hawk moth, and it was absolutely awe-inspiring and basically kick-started my lifetime love affair with hawk moths. Now there's something here which I think is rather wonderful. It's not butterfly related, but it is the Ambassador Cruise Line, who have a whale watching series of cruises alongside Orca, who are one of Britain's leading cetacean conservation charities. Something else which I always wanted to do, and if my finances ever improve this much, I damn well want to go on one of these boats and see them. I've seen dolphins of various species. I've even cut up a dead one. But the only time in my life I've ever seen one of the great whales was in the Bay of Biscay in 1971, when I was on a ship bringing us back to Europe from Hong Kong, and briefly, very, very briefly, I saw the back and the spume of what I was reliably informed was a humpback whale disappearing under the water, and it's the only time I've ever seen one, and I would love to see another great whale. There's another report here on the great whale, on the, not great whales, on the Wild Spaces project. Again, this is something we talked about last week, but there are more pictures and more analysis for those of you who want to become involved in it. And I think it is a magnificent thing with which you should all be thinking about becoming involved. Then there is a thing about the British Butterflies Volunteer Awards, which again is something totally smashing. And again, I really, really, really would encourage everybody who is able to get involved with this. Now there's something actually cryptozoological here, because scientists and volunteers in New Zealand are on a mission to identify its unnamed butterflies. There are very few species of butterfly in New Zealand, but now scientists claim there could be far more endemic species, particularly within the Lycaenae family, the coppers. And I think just looking at these pictures are absolutely magnificent, and I am very interested to see how this pans out, because there are quite a few species discovered each year which are actually known, but they were confused with another species. And this is wonderful. It's a way of finding out more and more about our biodiversity, the biodiversity of the whole world, and helping, as we identify things, to be able to work out the best way to protect them. And that is something that we believe truly in here at the CFZ. There is an advert for different butterfly holidays. Here we have the northern Spain in the springtime, which has got a photo of one of my favourite butterflies, which is the scarce swallowtail, and another one of my favourite butterflies, which actually I don't know what it is. It's a copper of some sort. It looks very much like the extinct British large copper, but this is a wonderful excuse to be able to go and see some of these incredible butterflies that you'd never see in this country. There is an article about setting up butterfly conservation nature reserves in Wales, and about how actual cattle grazing on common land does help improve these areas for butterflies, which is something you wouldn't have thought, but it's true. Now we go, there's a rehash of the thing we talked about last week about looking for different species of Kent's moths in order to see how they are thriving. And here is another article about how to protect the smallest of the British blues, which is called the small blue. We really have no imagination, do we, in this country? It's one of the things I used to love about British history, is that an intrepid explorer would track for months along trackless wastes in the middle of Africa, find a swamp that was so full of disease that no one could live in it, track through that, and with their dying breath name the swamp Manchester. And I'm not saying that because Manchester's like a horrible swamp. Last time I went there it was really rather nice, but it does show how the British have a lamentable lack of imagination, which is one of the things that I think endears my country to me. And here we have an interesting thing about setting up caterpillar food plants in your garden for next year. And who can tell me what that is, what butterfly that is? Please answer in the comments below. And we have an interview with a guy called Ken Orp, who is the butterfly recorder for Derbyshire and the Transect coordinator for the East Midlands branch and coordinator for the wider countryside butterfly survey, about his life with butterflies. And that is it for this episode, but I hope you enjoyed it. I strongly advise you to go along to the Butterfly Conservation website, the URL is below, and join this wonderful organisation, because it is probably the most enjoyable and most useful conservation organisation of which I've ever been a member. I've been a member for the best part of 20 years, and I strongly recommend that you go and join us. I'll be back on Saturday, when on Saturday we are going to be going to the recent Bigfoot or Littlefoot Research Day in Somerset, and I gave my first lecture for about 7 years, and dear Karen Heath, my secretary, films it. And so next Saturday is me talking about talking about all sorts of things, but particularly talking about reality tunnels. So if you're there, Mr. McCrillen, I'm going to be seeing you. Bingo, bingo, bongo, everybody.